And so we have come to the final day of BGGCon. So day 4?
I'm counting it as 4.
Yeah, day 4 of BGGCon. So it's Saturday night, and as is consistent, it is 3:30 in the morning, Sunday morning. Yeah, so for all intents and purposes, for me at least, BGGCon is over. And I look forward to seeing my guest or whoever, whatever, the guy who's recording with me. I look forward to seeing him every year at this, and that's James Nathan. So James, tell folks a little bit about you.
Sure, I'm James Nathan. I like to play games. I play pretty obscure things. I like coming here because of the depth of the library, to play some of the new things, but mostly the older things, you know. And the more I come, the more other people I meet, and I'm slow, you know. I'm a person who I think sometimes knows that in theory it's about people and not games, but that in practice I sometimes have trouble with that.
Okay.
And I think that in actuality, for me, it may be about the games and not the people.
No,
but
you know, it's really okay though. I mean,
yeah, sure.
Today in my guild,
Yeah.
somebody was like a dissenting opinion.
Yeah.
Actually, for me, it's about the games and not the people.
Sure.
So I totally get that.
But
and that's okay.
I think this place changes me more the other way, right? Part of it is coming year after year. Part of it is how friendly other people are. Part of it is the people that, you know, I'm not somebody to reach out to other people, right? But so, for instance, there's a guy a couple floors up who lives in Austin. He brought 14 IKEA bags full of games and 2 Rubbermaid totes.
That's a lot of, with the library
to
here,
a convention with 3,000 titles. He
Right.
brought that many games, right?
Wow.
So he also has been at a different convention locally and been playing games for 2 weeks straight, right? Guy's he's totally amazing person, nice as could be. So we're here Tuesday night. He's here with all his bags. And he essentially is running a like mini secret library for the people he knows out of his hotel room. And you just say, hey, let me go get something out of your room. And he'll give you his room key card. And you just go and like root through his bags. And there were so many hidden treasures that
Just really obscure
as someone
stuff.
who's generally known for having sure taste in games, I've never even heard of or seen, right? But you know, so anyway, so if I post things on the Geek about various obscure things, he's always a guy to thumb things and comment things and whatever. And I said something once, and he's like, "Hey, if you're going to BGGCon, we should meet up." You know, and so years ago that happened, and him pulling me in like that, saying, "Hey, come play with us," and then the people I met from that, and just it's. So for this con, it's slowly becoming more about the people, right?
Okay.
You know, between Patrick doing his bingo card that one year,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Right. However, I ended up on the bingo
Yeah.
card, right? And you know, volunteering for the con, teaching people games, right? Helps a lot with that, and just the drunk people you run into. So there was a guy a couple years ago. We were sitting in the hotel lobby bar. There's a Barcelona and somebody else soccer game on TV, right? So this guy's talking to us, and
Just random dude, right?
random dude,
Okay.
explaining way more to me about soccer and the history of Spain than I ever knew, right? And about the Barcelona and Spain kind of thing. But he explained it via the El Grande map, right? And where else could you have a conversation about political disputes in Spain by using the El Grande map, right?
As you do.
So that guy, when we were just coming up the elevator, and I said, hey, that's the guy with the big Julius Caesar map, and I've been telling other people about some interesting escape room things he does that blow my mind, you know, because he's some guy that was sitting next to me at the bar telling me about whatever, you know what I mean? And so it's just, year after year, I meet like one new group, right? This cat last year who I've been working in the library at 8 a.m., right? Comes in drunk as can be, asking for a game recommendation. I recommend some goofy stuff to him, and he's goes out there, is playing with one of my good buddies I play games with every week. So this guy's walking through the rules, and he's got this cold, room temperature stale, not cold, room temperature, homebrew that he is like, got all these cups. He's been up drinking all night, and he's like pouring them together and being like, "Oh, here, you should finish this off." And just a night. But he's such an amazing human being.
Doug,
you got it. Absolutely, it was going to be Doug. And Doug's amazing. And so last night when we had Not Hot Games Room.
Oh, okay. We hold. Yes.
Caveat also, I can't consume content coverage while I'm at the event, right? So I will be listening to the daily recaps on my way home. So I have no idea anything that was said or not said last night. But
you were going to talk about that here shortly. But okay,
so at Not Hot Games Room last night,
the genesis of that.
This guy named Jim comes up, who I've never met before, but it turns out is a good friend of Doug. And I thought they kind of had a Doug vibe. And Doug's group, whose name is Chits, Chits, and Giggles. That's what they named their local group, okay? They walk around with balloons tied to themselves so they can easily find each other in the big ballroom.
Or when they're drunk. But yeah, whatever,
yes.
right.
So they came up, and a couple of them had balloons, and they were giving me kind of the Doug vibe, and I was like, "Are you guys friends with?" And I don't think I remembered his name at the time. But I explained this situation. I was like, there was this drunk guy last year who was like, "Oh yeah, our friend Doug," and everybody's like, there was no question who I was talking about, right?
That was Doug.
So Doug's good friend Jim saw something I posted about Not Hot Games Room and brought like 9 people to play my weird stuff, and so now just making friends with all of those people, right? And I was telling Holly and Mr. Holly about the
i.e. Longstreet, yes.
About Bajellan's Kitchen that I ate at in Norway a couple weeks ago, and
83-year-old grandmother.
83, I assume grandmother.
Magellan.
Oh, so I'm trying to get through this story, and there's so many people walking by that I know that it's hard to get through a story, and it's just great. Like, I have such like name and face blindness that like being able to know and recognize and talk to people, like that's just not even a thing that happens, right? And so it's great. So you can probably tell it really is becoming more people and less games, right? I no longer come with a spreadsheet of these are the games we're going to play, and here's who's reading the rules, and here's everybody. Like, those days are over. It really is more now, oh, I should remember to talk to this person and meet this person. And so
that's awesome. So Amanda and I met you 1 year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah,
I think 3 years ago, playing Time's Up, and almost passing out laughing so hard because we didn't know your name for like a year or 2 years. We just knew you as The Stance.
Yeah.
So tell folks a little bit about that.
In the same way that I'm finally come around to this being more about people than games, there was a couple times this week when I almost came around to it being more about the experience than about like winning or something, right?
Right, yeah, sure, right.
And that's easy if it's like 1 a.m. and you're playing some goofy game, right? But there was a couple times where we were just playing a game that we didn't want to be playing. Right? And the only way to enjoy ourselves was to just stop caring about the game.
Right.
And maybe I had a bit of a breakthrough a couple times this week on that. Which is a long way around to saying that there was a time when I sure took things, even if it was Time's Up, pretty seriously, right? And just the way my mind works, like, if I can do my best at it, I'm going to do that, even if it's Time's Up or whatever. So, and tiny efficiencies and whatever, so I like to play in a way that I pace around a lot, right? And so I stand in kind of a forward lunge where it kind of like keeps me from moving around. And when there's a table, which there usually is, it gives me an easy access to like drop cards quickly and have piles, and it's not like I look people in the eye anyway. And so maybe I do it because it gives me a way to like look down more naturally than who knows. You know, I don't have a I used to do a lot of pottery, right? And for a long time, I wanted to make clay that would expand, right?
Okay.
So pottery, when you make it, it's going to dry, and then you're going to fire it, right? But when it dries, it's going to shrink, let's say 10% on average, right?
Okay.
When you fire it, it's going to shrink another 10%, right? And it always bothered me that when I had my final thing I made,
You were happy with it.
It was so much smaller when it came out of the kiln than it was when I made it, right?
Right. So
I made it the size I wanted it to be.
Exactly.
Why is
Right.
it this other size, right? I have a pretty good metabolism, and I've always, like, I get cold. Sometimes I get a weird fragile feeling in my bones, you know, and for a long time, I couldn't figure out why I wanted to make pottery that would expand, right? And it's art class, so you have to write like an artist statement or whatever, right? And so for years, I had to write one, but I don't feel like I knew what the answer was. I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And then it occurred to me one day that maybe I wanted to be fat, maybe not fat, but that I wanted to be
Thicker,
right? And I really felt like when it occurred to me that that's what I wanted to do, that maybe that felt like the right answer, right? So I don't have the right answer for why I play so intensely at things like Time's Up, right? I'm still working on that, on my passion for the long tail of things like the Not Hot Games Room, right? So I don't have answers.
but I love how passionate you are about
Sure.
it, and that's what it comes through, and it's hysterical in the best way possible, right?
Passion's a totally great way to put it.
Right.
I generally, you asked me if something was wrong or something earlier today because I was just kind of sitting still, and I generally have a speed of going and being on pause, and I was just on pause, and so when I'm playing a game, I'm usually on going, right?
And the passion comes through in a way that it brings joy
Yeah.
in a lot of ways to other people. So, for instance, tonight, we were playing Time's Up with a group of like 17 or 19 of us, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And you got up and got in the stance.
Yeah.
And it made me smile.
Yeah.
And I knew it'd make Amanda happy.
Yeah.
So while you were going through everything, I got a couple pictures. I didn't say a word.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything. I just texted it to Amanda, and just tears streaming down her eyes, laughing so hard. And the only response was, "Thank you."
Yeah.
And and that's why I say it's about the people. It's
Absolutely.
that passion. It's that joy. It's just the connection with one another, right?
Yeah.
So on that note, last year, after playing Time's Up, we were playing a game with a couple of magnets on both sides.
Mino and Tari.
Thank you. And you brought up the idea of the Not Hot Games Room.
So we had earlier in the day,
Last year.
last year, been playing up in 1325. 1325 is one of my favorite rooms. It has windows, it has tall ceilings, and almost no one is there.
13th floor, for those that know, all the 25s, as I've mentioned, are little gaming spaces. Like we're sitting in one right now on 225 on my floor, and there's 6 tables in here and not a soul in here.
And a private bathroom for the room.
Which is wonderful, and a jug of water.
And a jug of water. And there was no one there, you know, and my groups, you know, while I'm doing better about interacting with those strangers on certain occasions, you know, my regular weekly group all comes. And so
That's your safe space, kind of.
it is, and
or
so
comfort zone,
sure,
maybe.
Sure.
Yeah,
so we
yeah.
often and also we know that we have the same taste in games, right? So we're often playing with each other, and so one of our general habits that we fall into is we all go to the library, we each check out a title, we all go have rules break, and then we plow through 4 games, and then we do it again, right? So 1325 was so uncrowded one day that we all just decided to pick a different table and set up our games. right? So we were all sitting at our different games, reading rules, and people would walk in, and I was like, wait a minute, this is just like the hot games room. I said, this is what I could do. I could take, so there's a geek list called Games Only You Have Played This Month that's been running since, I think it started in 2012. There's been a couple months that they missed. And essentially, on an honor system, if you were the only person to have logged to play this month, add your title to this list, and like I said, I can't explain why, but I'm drawn much more to the long tail of titles that I think need more exposure or whatever. So I'm less interested in what's new on Kickstarter and what's new coming out at Origins and Gen Con than I am on what titles people are posting to that list every month, right? That's where I find out about new games I want to play, right? So I exported all the lists to Google Docs and I
Going all the way back to the beginning?
yes.
Okay, all right.
And wrote some formulas to give me a list of here's all the titles that have appeared, here's how many times they've appeared. And I scrolled through however many titles it was, I definitely don't know. And said, oh, I own that. Oh, I really want to try that. Here's ones I can bring. Here's ones that are in the library. Here's ones that are in storage. And so
in storage in the BGG
storage.
library.
So the library has 3,000 something titles. There's a separate storage collection of 3,000 something titles. And there's normally a system where they'll put up a geek list and you can add titles and say, I want this pulled, I want this pulled, I want this pulled. And then based on thumbs, they'll pull X titles into the library. So I tried adding titles to that a couple years ago for things I was interested in playing, and I generally got comments that said, you don't want to play that, that game's really terrible. And then no one thumbed my games. So this year I just emailed the staff that run the convention and said, I have a crazy idea for an event that's based on games no one wants to play. And I said, can I have special compensation to have these pulled from storage and have them checked out for longer periods and more titles, and I'm going to go set them up and have this terrible event. And they were great. They were just like, sure, of course, And so they emailed me again when they got them pulled, and they emailed me with, hey, here's how you can violate all these library policies, and here's how we'll do it. And then even later the next day, I don't remember what was going on, but it was super crowded. But one of the people who's busy running the convention, walking by me, said, hey, how did your event go last night? And just the fact that, how'd she know it was me, right? The fact that she's aware of everything going on at the con enough and thought enough to ask, it was just great.
Little stuff like that matters.
Yeah.
So how did you choose the games that you chose for last night?
So, like I said, things that were available, right? Things I knew that were great. Basket Boss, Koali is generally worth playing, right? I'm a big fan of Habitats from last year. There's a Japanese designer who honestly, I don't know his name, but had a 3-player co-op trick-taking game called Familiar's Trouble. Cog, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but it's
Kogi or...
it's Kogge.
Right.
An earlier game from the Hansa Teutonica developer that I think just does some quite interesting things, And just to take a sidetrack, because that's what I do. So I got into the hobby back in 2003 or 4, right? And so at that time there was, let's say, 5 podcasts, and there was 1 person doing videos, right?
Right.
And Scott Nicholson, right, was the guy doing videos.
Of course.
And he essentially, around that time, put out a video to say, games, right? And he was kind of like, you know what? I'm at a point where I just don't care that much about the new stuff, And I feel like I've been at that point for a long time where I don't care if the game's good. Does it do something interesting that I haven't seen before, right? And so I can forgive a whole lot of not being a good game if it
does something cool and original.
If it makes me think in a slightly different way or something like that. So a lot of those titles fit that niche for me, right? So I brought a thing called Eine gegen Eine, which I think it has multiple designers, but one of them that got my attention was Marcel André Casola Merkel, of things like Tuluva and I think some other things that I don't remember. But it is a German language game that doesn't come with rules, and as you play the game, you have to figure out the rules. So it's pretty much a play once thing. The game's not bad, but you're not going to play it again. My understanding is that there were 10 English copies at Essen the year it came up that somebody had gotten early and been able to like translate or something and had not paste ups but roughly paste ups, right? And there was a copy that came up in the marketplace a couple years ago for $10, $20 or something. I've been looking at this game for a decade, right? So I brought that with me because I was sure that there was other people who would be quite excited to get to play it, right? I brought Planet Surprise, which is a Russian scratch-off game.
Which you were telling me about. This is nuts, dude.
So you buy these little packs. It's like 5 lotto cards, and it's on the bottom. It's got like action spaces for like what action you're taking. You're not going to use all of them. And then it has various planets, and everybody's has the same underneath of like positive planets, negative points, and you take your action and you do whatever it is, whether it's scratching yours off, looking at somebody else's, telling somebody else which planet to scratch off, and you go around 10 times and you add up some points. There was Zap Zarap, which is sort of like a Sorry Parcheesi type game, but for choosing the movement, there's 13 little canisters in the middle that have BBs in them that correspond to 1 through 13, and you're going to roll the dice, and everybody's going to pick them up and shake them by their ear, and you get to move if you get the number you rolled on the dice or less. Anybody who got greedy and took over that won't get to move, and it's sort of listening dexterity. And it's great because when I talk about feelings you don't get from games and ways you have to think differently, have you ever had to play a game where how well you could hear in one ear, like your ear gets tired playing and I have to switch ears partway through, right? It turns out I have a right dominant ear, like at least when it comes to detecting how many BBs are in a tiny cylinder, right? So there were some titles I set up from the library that I didn't end up playing. Some of these titles we played during the year in preparation to make sure that I wasn't making a huge mistake in adding it, right? There was another guy who was here who doesn't come very often and who's a pretty private guy. He last came 10 years ago. He said,
I think that would quantify as doesn't come too often.
No. He said he was coming just to meet with people and didn't even expect to play a game. He has obscurer taste in games than I do, and I was quite excited to possibly get to meet him. And I did get to meet him. We did play some games together. They were fantastic. He's somebody that I'm in some email conversations with occasionally in a larger group, but somebody who's been in the hobby for a long time, and I sure didn't think knew my name or anything. But when he said, "I'm glad to meet you too," like just blew my mind, right? But so when that guy puts together lists of his like top, let's say 189 games, and half of they're titles that only I and he love, I feel like, right? And so if he says he loves it, I'm gonna take a look at it, right?
I can relate to that. Sure.
So he's a lot of the titles honestly were based on his recommendations. He wouldn't call them recommendations. He would think you were crazy if you wanted to play the things that he likes. But so the other one I think you're probably waiting on me to say is Hinklenstein, right? So I'm a big Klaus Zach fan, and specifically of Chili Spiele, right? So as best I understand it, and I'm no authority on the situation, Klaus Zach of Zach Verlag wanted to produce games that were too unique and obscure for Zach to make themselves, right? Zach of Hamster Roll and Bambolio and Zap Zarap. Klaus is actually the designer of Zap Zarap.
And Balsac as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So if that guy wants to make games that have such like high component costs and low expectations of sales and whatever, that he has to make a spin-off of his own company, right?
So the two that people are going to be most familiar with, I believe,
Yes.
are the Climbers.
Yep, Die Aufsteiger.
Right, and Neue Heimat.
Correct.
Right. And then last night.
So there was also one called Cobra. Don't worry about Cobra. And there's another city one that I haven't played. So there is this one called Hinklenstein, right? So the story about Hinklenstein, 4 or 5 years ago, when I did come with a spreadsheet, we were playing Cobra. It was very disappointing. We weren't going to check out Hinklenstein because we were so disappointed in Cobra. And there was a guy, don't ask me his name, who was walking by. He had Aufsteiger and Neue Heimat in his hand. And we said, hey, have you ever played Hinklenstein? Is it any good? And he's like, oh, God, it's great. It's 12:30 at night. He goes, I'll be right back. I'll go check out the library and teach you. And he stopped whatever he was doing to return those to the library. He went and got the other one, and he sat and played it with us. And it was great, you know. And I hadn't played it since. And so partially I just had fond memories of playing it. Fingers crossed it was actually any good, let alone I sure don't remember how to play it. And so we set it up to. We did have one that was kind of a disaster called Auto Scooter.
Oh, whoa.
Complete
of a disaster? Okay.
So when the boys I typically play with, when we come to BGGCon, we don't generally do this at home, but when we're here and we're trying to shotgun through new games to try, I found on an RPG website these cards you can get. They're kind of like when you go to the Brazilian steakhouse, right? And you got like a green, I'm ready to go, give me more meat, and a red, like, no, stop,
I'm done.
I'm done, right? So the card says, on the green side, it says ready for action. And on the red side, it says done. So we get them out of our name tags, we set them on the table on the ready for action side when the game sets up. And then at any point, you're like, let's stop. I want to put it back in the box. We do not need to finish this nonsense. You just kind of flip it over, right?
Just casually.
You casually flip it over. But I'm very sensitive to, I don't want my disappointment in the game to affect somebody else's enjoyment.
Sure.
So
totally.
I don't want to bring up and be like, this game
You
stinks.
don't want to be the killjoy for someone else's
Right.
enjoyment.
So
right.
the point of the cards to me is that it's a subtle way. And then, because the only people checking other people's cards is the people who are miserable.
Yeah, the one looking like, please God, let somebody else
Exactly.
have done that.
And then when you have a quorum, put it back in the box, right?
Yep.
So that's when you vocally be like, we got our quorum. Yeah. This thing's going back, right? So, we pulled the done card out on
second round
on
or was
Auto
it third
Scooter.
round?
I think it was the beginning of the third round, and really nothing even happens in the first round. So.
That was an abject disaster.
Yeah, so.
But I said something tonight that you were like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I was like, hold on. I was like, there have to be some really bad games for you to truly appreciate the good games that are out there.
Absolutely.
Right?
The boys I typically play with also, we've talked about just the density of games that we play here also gives a good stark contrast to, wow, that game seemed really great. Maybe it was just in contrast to we've been playing lousy things, but that difference in
quality
in the comparison
yes.
of adjacency, right? In his defense, the guy who did not recommend, but who likes Auto Scooter, is also a guy who says that QE is one of his favorite titles from Spiel this year.
I've told the story on the podcast how Gavin, the designer, I can't think of Gavin's last name, but the designer and manufacturer of his games, because they're all handmade wooden component games. And last year it was Fog of War, and this year it was QE, which stands for quantitative easing, which is a economic term, which I'll be honest, until Clay from Capstone.
Yeah.
When he was like, QE, does that stand for quantitative easing?
Sure.
And I was like, until he asked me that at Essen, I had never heard that term in my life. I didn't go to college.
Sure.
I don't have an economics degree or anything like that. And I was like, what does that mean?
Right.
And he explained it, and I was like, yep, that's exactly what it means. And so I had emailed Gavin after the fact. I had emailed him late, because all of these are handmade, and he runs a Kickstarter for like 50 copies or something like that. And he said, hey, I'm going to have 17 copies of these ready in time for Essen. Anybody who emails me, first 17 people.
Yep.
And I forgot. I was busy getting ready for the show. And I was like, oh my, when I read what it was, and I was like, this is right up my alley. I've got to be able to get this game. I was like, Gavin, really, are you sold out?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to guilt him into it. Not that.
Sure.
But maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Just, gentle prod. So instead of there being 17 copies at Essen, there were 18 copies of it at Essen. So thank you.
And did you bring your copy?
I did not, because I actually looked at it and went, no one's going to want to play that. And then tonight at about 3 o'clock, no, I'd say about 2:45 tonight, this morning.
Yeah.
After we get done playing
Time's Up.
We're walking around kind of hanging out. You just finished playing a game and you're like, can a brother find a copy of QE? And I was
and really, I've been doing that all week. I've been texting or messaging everybody who's here that I knew went to Essen and I thought would have an overlapping taste enough that they might have a copy.
which you went to Essen as well.
I did.
And voluntarily chose to not pick up a copy.
I was worried about luggage space. I was worried that it was going to fall on the
heavier side, right?
No. Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I was worried about the
physically
physical heavy side. I was worried that it would be quirky and not really something I wanted to have.
Okay.
Something I wanted to try once. That's why I come to BGGCon, right? Well, now it's for the people, but there was a time when it was to try the things out.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So anyway, go ahead.
So you're sitting there finishing up this card game, and I couldn't find you at first.
Yeah.
4p as opposed to 8p or 0p, whatever, it doesn't matter. Then you were like, my kingdom to find a copy of QE. And I was like, funny you mentioned that. I said about 5 tables over from right where we're standing, they're playing it. And you were like, what?
Yep.
And we made a beeline over there.
It no longer mattered what time it was.
And all of a sudden, and I had said, they had offered me to play, and I was like, nah, I got to go pack, I got to record.
Yeah.
And I brought you over, and they were like, okay, we're going to stand up, you two play this game.
They hadn't even started yet. They seemed to have just set up, and maybe they had explained the rules. But
they actually had just finished one game
previous
of it,
game?
right.
Okay.
So take it from there.
It was great. I knew, so the general conceit is, the important part to me in the attraction to the game is that it's an auction game where you can spend all the money you want.
Literally, there is no cap on how much you can spend.
But that whatever country prints the most money is automatically disqualified and loses. And I'm a huge fan of that mechanic in game where you're pushed to do something, but if you do it too much, you get the boot.
You cut your own throat, right?
The not donating enough in Habengut and things like that, right?
Right, yeah.
So that's what drew me to it. What I didn't realize and was that the bids are largely private. I, for some reason, thought they were public. I don't think the rules are publicly, I don't think there's a PDF or anything. And I didn't realize that, that's a twist that might have made me buy it, right? So you want me to just explain?
Sure, go for it, because I'm going to be live streaming this here in a couple weeks. So yeah, go for it. And people are going to be really upset that they don't have a copy of this.
So you've got, each player gets assigned a country. You get assigned your country will be public. You get assigned a private, industry type. And there are 16 tiles you're going to bid over 4 rounds. Each round has 4. And the tile distribution is 1 industry per country. Each industry is represented for each country, and they have various point totals on them, 1 through 4, roughly. So in each round, one player will go. They'll flip up one for public auction. They will write a public bid that is visible to everyone what they bid on a tile.
So if it's my turn, if I put out a bid or I flip this tile and I say, okay, I'm going to set the base price essentially at, say, 10 units, $10, whatever.
The other players then take their dry erase markers, and on the back side of their bid sheet, they will write what they want to bid. Something lower, something higher, and you set them all down face down. Whoever's turn it is, Edward will pick them all up and look at them. If there's a high bid, that person has won, but no one else will know who won. The price they paid, sorry, the price
They'll
they paid.
know who won, they don't know how much.
Correct.
So if I set the bid at 10, they don't know if you won at 11 or you won at 35.
Right, you'll know you won with more than that, but not what it is. There's some couple other nuances, but essentially it's that. You go around and around. It was great. It has that Ponzi scheme thing of not knowing like what some of the costs going on are.
Completely player driven.
As the other fellow describes it, it has trackable hidden information, right? It's not like a game like Power Grid where you have to have the discussion of are we going to have our money open or closed. It's really trackable. What's the point in hiding it, right? That this game has things he can track that are hidden. I don't know.
I'm trying to think what it is because, okay, I paid more than 10 if I won this tile, if that was the base price.
Yeah.
But you don't know how much.
He may have been.
So I would argue that it doesn't.
I may be totally misremembering what he said.
But moral of the story was, we finished the game. You and I bid printed the exact amount of money, 121 units, whatever it was. The guy who was completely eliminated had bid something like 145, and another one had bid 98.
And it was such a great moment. I mean, how often in an auction game, when you're bidding on something positive, right? I mean, there's auction games where you have like a weird reverse bid where you don't want to win something. But in an auction game where you generally want to win the bid, he was so disgusted that he had won the last bid because he knew that probably put him out of contention, and looked on his face the rest of the game, which granted it was like one more turn. It wasn't another 2 hours he sat and suffered.
But it was just abject disgust.
It was just great.
And just if a look ever said glory to Rome to everybody else playing and himself, that was it. And that was just, it was special. That was really, really good. And the good news now that I say yes, people are going to be pissed off, 18 copies, this and that.
Sure.
And I mentioned this previously, that Gavin told me that if and when we review and or do a playthrough of the game, if people are interested, they need to send him their email. And he will run another Kickstarter to make another set of copies for this game, but he's going to limit it to about 50 because these are handmade. He makes so he can't do 500 of them. That's unreasonable. But he may do them in batches to run multiple Kickstarters.
Nice.
So before it pisses anybody off that you can't get this now. But there's likely to be demand because knowing our audience and knowing how good that was tonight, once we stream it, there's probably going to be a Kickstarter coming up soon thereafter.
Awesome.
So yeah, that was awesome. So I just wanted to say, and the reason I wanted to have you on here tonight was I like the way you think about things and the way you're able to verbalize them, I think is really interesting, but it's also, you're one of my absolute favorite people in this hobby. And you're James Nathan. You're not so-and-so with so-and-so show.
Sure. I have trouble introducing myself because like I'm just a guy, right? Like I don't to some degree, like I feel like I should have credentials to like do, you know what I mean? I have no credentials to like be an expert on things, right?
Right.
I'm just a person.
I find the way you are and just a lot of things about you fascinating.
Sure.
And I think you're a really good dude. I have been clamoring to get you to come to HeavyCon.
Yes, probably this year.
And your wife. So on that note, tell me that story, if you don't mind, about what you told me last night about your wife and being okay and her coming to Essen.
So, probably going back to the sense of, is it about the people or is it about the games? And, my wife generally doesn't play the games. If it's a family thing and it's something, we're playing code names or something, she'll jump in.
Right.
She generally almost actively dislikes them otherwise,
Just not her bag.
She is a amazingly unique individual, and I would ramble on for a long time trying to explain her. And she is generally on my case to get rid of anything I own. She's, we're one of those families that makes like a trip to Goodwill every 2 weeks. She is constantly, let's purge anything we own, and not buying new things. And
So is it decluttering?
Her father used to was kind of a pack rat, and I think it's probably just a reactionary thing.
I totally get that.
against
Yes.
that.
Okay. Amanda's similar in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Okay.
So she's generally on my case to get rid of things, and she came to a game night once at a public meetup in I'm from around Cincinnati years ago, and she really was put off by how much no one talked to each other, right? This is her first time playing much other than, let's say, Ticket to Ride. We go to a public meetup, and a guy teaches her Reef Encounter from the rules.
Ouch. That's hard. That's rough. Okay. Right.
So,
right.
and that's not what tainted her. I mean, she is who she is. She wasn't going to like it anyway. But, so the context was, these people are all sitting around trying to figure out and learn and play Reef Encounter, and no one was talking to each other, right?
Right. There was no kibitzing.
Correct.
Right.
And we didn't know each other that well, which possibly that's the reason to kibitz more. But for me, that's a reason to kibitz less. Just not that I don't want to know everything about everyone. I just have trouble asking those questions.
Okay.
And so on the way home, I just wanted someone to ask what somebody's middle name was. Like, why can't we talk about something? Like, and so that was kind of her view of what happens, and not the other side of what happened.
Okay.
The way we are here, where there's, when you're more with friends, and to some degree that was with strangers, right? And I think she almost thought that going to events like this or HeavyCon was more strangers, and that it was that kind of thing, and why should we spend money to go and do that?
Okay. All right. And that's a fair point of view given her experience,
absolutely,
right? Sure.
Absolutely. And so her seeing me more in my element at Essen just really shifted her whole mindset.
So what was it? What was that though? What do you mean by that?
Possibly just the So we went in. It's more accessible Wednesday night than I thought, right? My understanding was that Wednesday night, maybe you can sneak in and walk around a little, but you should probably be a press person or know somebody, or and you couldn't exchange money, and it was much more open than I realized, right? So we went over maybe 5:30. Not having eaten dinner because I expected we wouldn't actually get in.
Right, you're just, okay, yeah, we tried, let's go eat.
That's absolutely what I expected to happen. Little did I realize how open it would be, and I think probably that alone of the excitement on my face and in my body, and just like the kid in a candy store
right.
giddiness, like I think she probably was like, just wow, he really this is giving him
secret access.
No, not that, but just, I'm so much more on go and less on pause, right? The passion and the intensity is just like, wow, he really does get a lot out of this, And so I think that, just I'm generally a fairly emotionless person, and I think just the amount of emotion she could see in me too. She's like, yeah, we should support this part of it more. So next year's budget has more money approved for events, less for games. She definitely still thinks there's enough games that no budget needs approved. But for events, it was much easier to pass this year.
That's cool, man. So she understands your passion, and she wants to support that now that she sees that.
Absolutely.
Right?
And your speech at Fitzpatrick's helped that a lot, right?
So I haven't released that yet. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it. I'm going to because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit. It's uncomfortable a little bit.
In general, it was a speech about. It's more about the people and less about the games.
Yes. Yeah. There you go. And but yeah, and I mean it's. I feel a lot like passion begets passion, good begets good, and I feel like I have been very fortunate to surround myself in this hobby with those that, even if they're not as passionate about this stuff as I am, that people are attracted to that or respond positively to that. And I think that was cool that helped in some small
Yeah.
way, that she saw that, oh wow, this is about people and
Yeah.
connections and sharing a love of this hobby. I mean, this is our version of a knitting club, right?
Sure.
Or a fishing
Yeah.
club or whatever it is. It's just this is our bag.
Yeah.
This is our
Yeah.
thing. So that's awesome to hear, man.
Yeah.
That's really,
Yeah.
really cool. And I cannot overstate how excited I was for both the Not Hot Games room, just the concept.
Yeah.
Where else are you going to do that?
Right. And there was another place you could have done it. So I didn't realize there was a separate sign-up sheet for rooms that have banquet tables in them, like boardroom tables, and some other rooms that are reservable. So I had initially signed up for a different room, then realized I probably had a banquet table, like a boardroom table, that probably wouldn't work, right? I need regular folding tables, a dozen of them, so I can set up these games, right? One giant table, that doesn't work for me, right? That list is for people who want to play a war game for a couple hours and need a dedicated space, right? So I had initially signed up on that list. When I found the other list, I signed up on it. I apparently forgot to take my name off the other lists.
Oops.
So today, I found that there actually was a second Not Hot Games room that was so not hot, there was no games in it. So I was walking around today and found that Thursday afternoon, I hope nobody went to, I don't remember the name of the room now, but there's a room on the first floor near the Innovation Ballroom where I had reserved it for Thursday.
Well, it happens. But what I meant by where else are you going to have that, I meant other than BGGCon.
No,
because
absolutely.
the library, right?
Right.
And I fully expected it, legitimately expected it to be a lot of fun playing just miserable games
Sure.
and sharing in the group misery,
Yeah.
but having a lot of laughs about it, right?
Yeah.
Come to find out, so I played 3 games at this. So I went
2
into
and a
it.
third?
Okay, 2 in a portion.
33%, yeah.
Right, yeah. So auto scooters.
Yep.
That's the type of game I expected it all to be.
Yep.
However, the other 2 games I am now actively hunting, and I've made it one of my life's goals to get Hinkle and Stein reprinted because I think it was that clever of a game and that good. And I think the people that like the types of games that we enjoy, I think will go past the level 0 thinking that, or to use a poker reference, I look at my cards, good hand, bad hand, and I just play that and that's it.
Yep.
And I think the people that go to level 1, level 2, level 3 thinking of, okay, I have a X hand. What do you have?
Yeah.
And then what do you think I have?
Sure.
That type. Because after I played Hinkle and Stein, and I had a lot of those, and I mentioned this last night, some of those moments in the game, I went and read the comments, and the comments, people didn't get past, a number of the people didn't get past that level 0 thinking.
Yeah.
And I think there is a lot more there than meets the eye. Like, take a game like Northern Pacific, the Winsome game, that some people argue or ask, is it even really a real game?
Yeah.
But when you can go levels into that, and then you're like, oh, dude, that's really clever.
Yeah.
It's on that kind of level of game. And so I go in expecting this to be just a disaster game-wise.
Yep.
And then the other one being Basket Boss, which was a really just kind of not PC, but just a tongue-in-cheek basketball game, but with a really, really good auction mechanic.
Yeah, and interesting, it's a basketball game where there's no simulation of the game. Your only simulation is being the manager, hiring the team.
Yep. So yeah, man, this was a lot of fun, and I look forward to, for all intents and purposes, ending BGGCon every year playing.
Time's Up.
Dude, I cannot remember that name tonight, but playing Time's Up with you because that intensity, but it's less now intense seriousness about the game, but
Yeah.
it's more intensity in let's have fun and just now it's almost shtick.
Right,
And
right.
it's glorious and it makes me smile. Not only playing the game with you, but the thought of playing the game
Yeah.
and the anticipation
Yeah.
brings a smile to my face.
I'm friends with the Monikers guys, and a similar game to Time's Up, and I was demoing it at PAX West a couple years ago, in a pretty crowded area, and I had to charade the guy who threw his shoe at George W. Bush, right? So it does, it has some cards that aren't the specific person's name, but just kind of describes them, right? The woman who spilled hot coffee on herself at McDonald's. And I physically, in the middle of demoing, stood up and took my shoe off and threw it across the room. and yeah, it's just a lot of fun, like when you can, sometimes I'm good with strangers, and sometimes the clues hit and sometimes they don't, or the cards, but.
Yeah, good stuff, man. All right, so this is the end of the year for us, or at least for me. It's the end of it's the end of con season.
Yep.
This is it.
I got one more post-SM gathering in Cincinnati, possibly next weekend.
All right, but it's a local thing, right?
Yeah,
Small,
yeah,
low
sure,
key.
sure,
right.
sure.
And I mean, we have our game nights and everything, but this is it for me. Very happy to have experienced everything that I did this week. The Not Hot Games Room was a blast. Seeing old friends, making new friends, and just having a really, really great time. This is a great way to end the year, and I don't see me not coming to this going forward. And it's just, I mean, my biggest regret, honestly, is the fact that Amanda's not here, and that's a huge bummer.
Absolutely.
But outside of that, it's been an awesome time, and I'm glad we got to hang out more than I expected this weekend.
Yes, much more.
So that was a really good time, man. So thanks a lot for doing this.
Yep.
Thanks a lot for the passion.
Of course.
And thanks for turning me on to some really good, not hot games.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too.